Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are finally stepping across the ocean. Somebody made a comment in one of my previous videos, and I do try to catch all of you guys' comments, but at 13,500 subscribers, you guys are amazing. Gets a little hard to follow all the comments, but I happened to catch this one that said, he basically said, you send a fly out of all the same places or the same general region. I got to thinking about it. I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So today I am deciding to be brave. So we are taking our A320 British Airways, and we are coming out of London Gatwick, and we're going to be flying down to Glasgow, Scotland. I do have the Glasgow airport, the payware that is available on the marketplace. So we'll be taking a look at that once we get on over there. It'll be our first flight to it. So let's go ahead and get this aircraft rolling. If you're interested in learning how to fly the Airbus A320 by Microsoft Flight Simulator, consider joining my Patreon site, level tier 2 or above, to get access to my Airbus A320 guide. This guide is a full flight tutorial from Tucson, Arizona to Los Angeles, California, with all of the flight plan information included. You can do everything that this guide is displaying by simply owning the guide itself. It walks through everything step by step. Here you can see the table of contents on the screen so you can get an idea of what it currently possesses. It's over 145 pages of detailed documentation with pictures and detailed text letting you guys know exactly what you need step by step to reproduce this flight. Again, no other third-party add-ons other than the Flybywire A32NX are required, which this guide does tell you how to install, and it gives you all the information you need to get comfortable with the A320. Again, if you're interested in acquiring this guide, please join my Patreon site, level tier 2 or above, and you will also get access to all of my guides, including the TBM 930, the G3000, and the G1000, and soon to be the Cessna Citation Longitude. Thank you guys for all your continued support. Let's move on to the rest of the movie. All right, so while the aircraft is being loaded up, we're going to be taking a look at our SimBrief flight plan. So, by the way, guys, this is a full flight tutorial, so everything that you guys will need to fly this aircraft will be included in the video. There will also be chapters down in the links in the description below, so if there's any particular portion you guys are looking for, feel free to skip on ahead to that section. But we can see here we're going to fly the British Airways A320. We're using flight number 354 from London Gatwick over to, again, Scotland, Glasgow. And we are using the Flybywire's A320 profile, which can be found on their website. So be sure to check that out if you're using the Flybywire A320. If you're flying the A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator and you're not using the Flybywire A320, you are missing out to an extreme. I can't stress that enough. We want to make sure our reserve fuel is set to at least 45 minutes for an IFR flight. And let's come on down to our cost index. We're going to be setting that to about 60. Remember, cost index is how much fuel you burn in comparison to how fast you go. The higher the number, the more fuel you burn, but the faster the flight will go. Fuel factor, we're going to go ahead and leave that at 0 today, as I've learned a couple of things, so we're going to see what happens today. We're not going to be taking any extra fuel, as that is calculated up here in the reserve fuel. Thank you for the gentleman who pointed that out in one of my videos. I did not know that. So, kind of a cool feature there. So we're going to see what kind of fuel load we get. So we're going to leave the extra fuel off and just focus on the reserve fuel that we have up here. Departure, we're going to be using runway 26 left out of Gatwick today. Here is our flight route. We have our LAM 6 Mike Sid going to LAM, jumping on to the L1 or the Lima 10 airway, traveling over to Bravo Papa Kilo, over to the Uniform November 601 airway, jumping on to Ribble. From the Ribble fix, we'll be jumping on to the Ribble 1 Golf Star into Glasgow, excuse me. All right, so let's go ahead and come up top and hit Generate OFP or Generate Operational Flight Plan. Once that is complete, we're basically done with anything that we need to worry about with SimBrief. However, there is one other step that you guys might consider before closing this. So we're going to be using the SimBrief integration that's available with the Flybywire A320. Now, you might still want to leave this up in case for any reason you need to edit the flight. It's very easy to come back and do so. if you close it, you can still get back to it. It just requires a few more steps. So I would recommend leaving SimBrief at least up on the screen here until you have completely entered in your flight plan into the MCDU and confirmed that everything is working. So without further delay from here, let's go ahead and jump back into the cockpit, get the aircraft powered on, and start looking into the configuration. Alright, so stepping back into the aircraft for a second, the first thing we're going to do is come down to our flight pad, as this is going to be the easiest way to get much of the information that we need over into the aircraft. So we just click anywhere on the screen, it turns the flight pad on. And again, these features are only available in the A320 from Flybywire. We're going to click on From SimBrief. Okay, so it looks like it did not save my name. So what we're going to do here is you want to copy and paste your name into here. Now you can literally do this. Let me show you the easiest way to do this. Let's pull up our SimBrief again. And the easiest way to do this is we can, well, we don't want to log out though. So you can see you can copy here. Nah, come on, let's come down here a little bit. You don't want to log out if you don't have to. So I'm going to show you guys a different way to do this, and I didn't think to do it fast enough. Here. So we're going to grab it from right here. Make sure that this is not... Oh, there we go, just like that. It's all one word. It's the way I have it. And then we can come back into the simulator. Click there, Control V, boom, done, enter. Okay, that's my username for SimBrief. Come over to the dashboard, hit From SimBrief. What's going on here? Oh, there it goes. All right, just took a second. It's just starting to wonder. I was being impatient. Now, this is a really handy page for those of you who haven't seen this particular portion of the aircraft. I really recommend that you dive deep into this when you use this. You have your departure route right here, or actually your entire route right here. 350 nautical miles lets us know what the distance is. Okay, and we have all of our MEDAR information up over here. We got our winds 340 at 6 knots. Okay, and then we have our altimeter, or in our case the QNH 1023. We have our outside temperature and dew point right here. So those are the bigger things that I'm going to be looking at as I'm starting to load up the aircraft, but you got tons of information here that is extremely helpful. And again, you have your wind up here as well. So let's go ahead and keep moving. The other thing we have is move on to the dispatch page. You have your operational flight plan. This is the exact same flight plan that we have in SimBrief. You can scroll through and have all that same information at the ready here on the flight pad, as well as your fuel. So what we can do with the fuel is we're going to go to operational flight plan. We're going to scroll on down until we see block fuel. Now this is in pounds, so this is something we're going to have to pay attention to, because I did not pay attention to that at the time of loading. So you have a couple different options here. If we come over here, you can see that we're only in kilograms over here. So the easiest way to do this, what I would say, would be just to get a converter from Google. So we're going to do pounds to kilograms. I'll show you guys what that looks like here. Okay, so just like something like this. And let me bring that off for a second, and let's go back to our OFP. 15055 is what we're looking for. So we're converting the pounds, 15055. We're looking for 6828 on the kilograms. So we can come back over to fuel, and you can just type in here. And that was 6828 kilograms, and you can decide how you want to refuel it, and refueling has been completed. So now the aircraft is loaded with fuel. You've got your fuel all set. We're good to go. Let's go ahead and look into starting the electrical power and getting the aircraft programmed for departure. All right, so the first thing we need to do is start at the overhead panel. We're going to begin by turning battery 1 on, battery 2 on, external power, and then we're going to start sort of a left to right flow here. So we got our ADIRs 1, 2, and 3. Scrolling down to crew oxygen supply, flip that on. We're going to do a fire test of engine 1. Fire test engine 2. I'm going to go ahead and do my APU fire test now. Fire test successful. Turn on all of our fuel pumps as refueling of the aircraft has been completed. So fuel pumps can now come on. Wing and nav and logo lights come on. No seatbelt or seatbelt signs on, and no portable devices or no smoking light on, as well as the emergency exit lights are now armed and ready to go. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop for the overhead panel for this time. Let's go ahead and come back to the forward cockpit here and start getting any lights or subsystems here that we want turned on. So we're going to brighten up our standby ADI. Add a little bit of brightness to the pilot's PFD and navigation display. Same thing on the co-pilot side. Upper and lower ECAM displays. FCP or flight control panel. And maybe just a hint down here on the center pedestal. Alright, so speaking to the center pedestal, we're also going to simulate that we have contacted ATC and gotten a transponder code. So we're going to clear what's in there. And let's say that we have 6125 and flip that on to auto or on. We'll go ahead and lock the cabin door now, as it doesn't take us very long to get the aircraft ready for takeoff. Make sure TCAS, predictive wind shear, and the weather radar are all set to the off position or standby position for now. Engine master mode is currently set to norm. We don't want it in the ignition until we're ready for engine start. Flaps up and spoilers are up and disarmed. Okay. So at this point here, we are ready to begin programming the MCDU. So let's get started on that. Programming the MCDU in Flybywire's A320 could not be any more simple. This thing is absolutely amazing with the SimBrief integration. We're going to hit clear here. We're going to go to ATSU. And actually, before we do that, set up a couple of options, for example, some things that I didn't catch earlier. So we'll notice here that the fuel loadout in the aircraft is currently set to kilograms. If I wanted it set to pounds, I would come here and go to the FMGC. And here we have our default barometric pressure in inches or hectopascals, depending on what your preference is. Weight unit kilograms to pounds. You can set your thrust reduction altitude, acceleration altitude. These are the altitudes above your current altitude, at which so basically the altitude above ground level, at which the aircraft will pitch nose down, accelerate, and then resume its climb at climb speed. Okay. For most aircraft in the United States, it's about 1,500 feet above ground levels when they'll pitch down slightly, again accelerating, and then do their climb out. Realism options, you can set the alignment time. So we're going to come on over here. I have it set to instant. I hate waiting for align times. I do the same thing in DCS. Okay. So just a couple of options that I want you guys to be aware of right out of the gate. There are many more features to this that I've gone over in previous videos, but for today we're just going to keep moving. So at this point we're going to go to our initialization page. And we're going to do initialization request. This again pulls the information directly from SimBrief. And we can see there's our departure and arrival locations, cost index, cruise level today, 360 feet. Wow, that's pretty high for where we're going. 350 nautical miles. I think we might change that. That's high. So let's kick that down a little bit. Let's change this to flight level. Tell you what, we'll go 30,000 feet. Oop. Too much. Let's change that because that's really high. There we go. All right, and AOC, active flight plan uplink, which means the flight plan has now been loaded. We come over to the flight plan page, and there it is. Now, it is important to remember when doing the flight plan, okay, that here we have, here we have our SID and we have our star. If we come back down to the MCDU, they are not programmed. And the reason being is because you can hope for whichever SID and star that you want, but ultimately that decision lies with air traffic control. Okay, so they may change it, which is why the uplink does not automatically populate them. That is actually real world practice. Again, because until you get your clearance from air traffic control, you really don't know which way you're going to be exiting or what runway you're going to be using. Now, for our simulation purposes today, obviously we have that advantage. So let's go ahead and click on our departure location, select departure. We're going to be using runway 26 left, is what was on the paper there. And we're going to be using the LAM-6 mic. Alright, with the LAM-6 mic loaded up now, we're supposed to have a transition to LAM, but we did see the LAM waypoint as our first fix, so that's perfectly fine. So we're going to leave this as is and hit insert. And then we'll come over here and select our destination, and we'll do the same thing for the arrival. Now we are coming in on the, let's find out from our flight pad here, and we'll go dispatch, operational flight plan. I'm pretty sure I'm saying flight pan and I don't mean to. And there it is. We are set for runway 23 is what we're expected to come in on. So let's go ahead and that's VOR 23. We want ILS 23. All right, and we're expected on the Rybe 1 Gulf. We'll set that in. All right, now we need to take a look and see if we have a VIA. Now we are going to be using Navigraph charts for that, as it is the really still the most efficient way to do it. It is nice that there is now a simulator integration with Navigraph charts, but I will tell you, if you have multiple monitors, I will agree with many who have also said it, that it's still the best way to go is to use the third-party application if you have multiple monitors. It just works significantly better. Foxtrot Papa or Papa Foxtrot? I can't remember. Papa Foxtrot? Yeah, buddy. All right, so let's come in here and star. That star isn't even listed. That's comforting. Let me pull this off to the side for a minute. Echo Golf, Papa Foxtrot. Echo Golf, Papa Foxtrot. Well, that's comforting. Okay, well, that means that this one Navigraph, either Navigraph or SimBrief is out of date, and I'm willing to bet my money it's SimBrief in this particular location, but we'll see. So let's see if we can still find the transition point onto the approach, but this is coming onto the star, so that's going to be a little bit tricky. We had two options, and I don't see either one of them on the, well, we have GLW, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, GLW and GOW. So what we're looking for are these points here. There's GOW, there's GLW. So what we're determining here, guys, is what a VIA is how are we getting onto the approach for runway 23, which is actually very odd when I'm looking at this. Okay, never mind. Final heading 229 degrees. It just, the way these arrows look, it looks like it makes you think that you're coming this way, but you're not. There it is right there. Okay, so we're coming in. Final heading. I see. Coming in from here. So it's our 45 degree intercepts. So we're coming in this way and then turning south. Gotcha. All right, fair enough. In this case, I think we're going to be using, let's see here, GOW or the GLW. Let's go 3331 instead of. We're going to want the GOW as our VIA, given that we're coming in from the north. So let's go ahead and select a GOW, and it will make us, let's see, GOW VIA rep 31. We can hit insert. Wait a minute. That is not what that said, is it? Okay, yeah, it did. Okay, okay. I had to second guess myself, man. All right, so we have our flight plan complete. All that is set. Let's go upstairs for a second and double check it in against the primary flight display. So what we're going to do here is, you can see it here. We're going to actually switch the rotary over to plan, and then we're going to use our arrows, just the up arrow, to step through. And we're looking for any breaks in the flight plan, any weird behavior, U-turns, things like that, that just absolutely don't make any sense. Yep, and there's our approach that we were just discussing on the chart. So if we look here, we're seeing the same thing basically. So here's where we're going to enter. Then we're going to come up over here and turn back onto the approach. And we see the same thing here. There's our entrance, turning, then coming back south onto the approach. Okay, so give you a little bit of reference from what you see on the charts to what you see in the MCDU. All right, so we can set that back to ARC. We're good to go there. Let's come on down to our MCDU and move on to the next section. We're going to go to the initialization page. And actually, before we do that, we've loaded our fuel. We have not loaded our cargo weight into the aircraft. So we're going to go to MCDU menu, ATSU, AOC, performance weights and balances. Now, the first one is fuel. We loaded that. You can see 6.8. We already got that, but we have not loaded our payload. So we're going to hit payload. And you can see the aircraft sort of bounce there for a second. That was all the weight being transferred onto it. So now we can go to our initialization page, hit the right arrow to go to the second page. You have zero fuel weight center of gravity. We're going to give that a tap. It auto calculates, tap it again, brings it in. Now for the fuel planning, all I do is type it in. We know it's 6.8. Remember, that's what we saw on our fuel load. If you ever need to confirm it, it's right here. Come on, camera. Quit messing with me. There we go. All right, so with all that calculated, we can now move on to our performance section. On the performance page, we're going to be selecting flaps 1. Okay, you'll almost always be using flaps 1 unless you are super heavy on a very wet runway. You might use flaps 2 or 3, but general practice, if you're on an airport fit for your aircraft, you'll probably be using flaps 1 for takeoff. Transition altitude, I believe we're in Europe. It's my first flight out of Europe, guys, so don't question me, or actually, no, absolutely question me. Don't judge me is what I meant to say. Don't you question me. Anyway, transition altitude is going to be 6,000 feet, if memory serves. V1, the speed at which you can no longer safely stop the aircraft. Give that a tab and program. VR, the speed at which we will begin pulling the nose up and rotating. And V2, the speed at which the aircraft will continue to climb and accelerate even in the event of engine loss. One engine loss. Both of them, you're not going to continue to climb and accelerate. All right, so we have our thrust reduction acceleration altitude, as I told you, currently set for 1,700 feet. We'll leave that as is, assuming given the fact that I don't know all the European procedures yet. I will be doing many flights out here. I've decided to make the jump, so let's see what happens. All right, so we have our performance page set. Now what we need to do is take V2 here, 138 knots. We're going to add 10 knots to it, which makes it 148 knots, and put it up in our FCP. And the only reason that they do this, guys, and almost all airline companies that I'm aware of do it, is just to provide a better and faster climb out. But other than that, there's no rhyme or reason for it. Some of the larger aircraft, your 747s, your A380s, may use plus 15 and plus 20 in some situations. So it really just depends. But the plus 10 is the generalized for your most of your commercial aircraft, A320s, 737s, similar aircraft of size and performance. Let's set our initial altitude to our transition altitude of 6,000 feet. Now, something that catches a lot of people off guard in the last few updates. You notice here that we have the hashed lines on the PFD. This lets us know that the flight management computer has the flight plan programmed in and can use it, but it is currently set to follow the heading mode. Okay, you can see that heading is alerted here. Now, we can either A, line this up with what our departure runway will be, or B, you can go ahead and see how you get an up arrow right here. Let me zoom in a bit. Notice you get the up arrow as you mouse just over the heading knob. That will put it into managed mode, which will basically turns on the flight management computer, sets your nav to the FMS, right? So for now, we'll go ahead and leave that as is, and we will actually grab our departure heading. That'd probably be a good thing to have, right? So EG Kilo Kilo, and we're looking at SIDS today. Actually, we're looking at taxi runway today. And let's look for airport minimums or airport information. There's 26 left, nice large runway for us, and we can zoom in. And let's see what the departure heading is going to be for 26 left. 258 degrees. So we can come up here on our heading knob and type in 258. And that will set our heading to the departure heading as we line up for our runway. All right, so MCDU and FMS configuration, or I should say the same thing, but MCDU configuration is complete. Now we're ready to start prepping the aircraft to get out of here. All right, so we've got the aircraft configured. Now let's go ahead and start setting everything, or program I should say. Now let's set everything else up for our departure here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to step upstairs once again, and I'm just going to complete another flow. Working our way from the center in. We're going to turn on our beacon light, letting everyone know that we're getting ready to start the aircraft. We're going to start the APU. As we start the APU, the lower ECAM page will automatically go to the APU page. As you can see here, once the rotation or compressor rotation percentage reaches about 100%, we will be able to use the APU, and the lower ECAM will switch back to the doors page. That's an indication right away without looking up top, letting you know that you are ready to switch over to the APU and come off of external power. As that's happening, we'll go ahead and turn our flight constraints on, or our altitude constraints. Turn our flight directors on, both pilot and co-pilot side. We can set our auto brakes to maximum for the event of a rejected takeoff. Again, just completing a flow coming on down here. We can switch our MCDU over to the flight plan page for our visual reference. We can arm the spoilers. I like to do it. I've seen a couple of different methods of doing this, guys. Some people do this right before taxi out. Some people do it right before takeoff. So it's really up to you. I don't think there's any harm in doing it one way or the other. I just tend to do all of this in one flow. So we will go ahead and set the spoilers to the armed position. We cannot turn or set our flaps yet. And TCAS remains in the standby position, as does predicted wind shear and the weather radar, until we have taxied out. Or at least gotten our pushback, excuse me. Alright, other than that, we can go ahead and take a look at our Navigraph charts and plan our taxi route. You can see we're back over here. And so we are going to want to back out. It's going to be a little weird, actually. Let's see if there's enough room. It's my first time at this airport, so I'm not 100%. Yeah, we can go tail left. Okay, so we're going to go tail out, or excuse me, tail to the right. And so we're going to back out to the right here, then taxi forward, join Kilo, take Kilo up to November, take November all the way up to Bravo Romeo, and join at Bravo here, and take the active right at the threshold, or at the piano keys. So with that in mind, let's take a look at our APU. We're back to the doors page, so we should be good to go there. Let's come back up top. Now, the engine bleed, APU bleed, is only used for the engine start process, so you don't have to turn the bleed on in order to switch off of external power. So we're just going to disconnect external power there. It is a little dim out, so I'm going to add a little bit of overhead lighting here. And from here, we are now ready to begin our taxi. Now, again, or a pushback. Now, because I don't know this aircraft or this airport very well, what I'm going to do here is use our pushback or toolbar pushback add-on. Link will be down in the description below if you guys are interested in this. It integrates all of the pushback services directly into the toolbar rather than having a third-party application. So in this case, we are going to disconnect our external power, disconnect the jetway. And as all those begin to pull away, we can come over to the pushback page, hit start pushback. Alright, and it's hooked up. We'll release the parking brake. Go to our pushback here. And all you need to do is just start adding some speed. And our pushback has begun. Now while that's happening, you sort of have to bounce back and forth. So I'm going to take this off screen here and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. While that's going on, we're going to jump back into the cockpit. We're going to set our engine master mode over here to start. And we're going to cycle on engine 2. Oh, my fail. First thing I should have done was turn on that APU bleed. That was my fault. Once the APU bleed is active, you can now see that the engine N2, compressor 2 is starting to, or the fan 2 is starting to rotate. Once it accelerates, it'll start rotating fan 1, the primary fan, and then we'll start getting rotation in the engine. While that's happening, let's step back outside for a minute. Some of this can get a little tricky. I'm going to accelerate our tug speed. Now what's cool is you can actually use Oh, they said we could. Apparently not. Says you can use the rudder, but it doesn't seem to be working for me, but that's alright. So using the tug direction here, we can now do this. Okay, slide it back and forth. It turns the tug based on how you are doing this. I'm just going to keep going straight for a minute. Let's adjust our camera view here. And let's start cranking that tail around. Wow, that thing turns really tight with this add-on. I was not expecting that. That's really nice. And from here, I think it's safe to jump back into the cockpit. And we have engine 1 at idle. So we'll switch on over to, or engine 2 is at idle, we'll switch to engine 1. Start turning the aircraft a bit further. And we'll call this good. And we'll just take our tug speed and set it to a stop. Let's go to aircraft. And you can either do it from here, or we can just come down here and flip the parking brake on. Go back to pushback and end pushback. And there goes our tug. And you can see that nose wheel steering is no longer showing here, meaning that nose wheel steering is now re-enabled for the aircraft. All right, now that the tug is out of the way, we can turn our predictive wind shear on. We can set our TCAS to TARA or TA, whichever you choose. I can't remember exactly what the difference is. One of them displays more or transmits more information than the other. I think TA is typically what's used, but we'll set it to TARA. Weather radar, up to you. I don't normally use it. Takes up too much of the information here, or of the display. Makes it a little harder to see for me personally. All right, we have both engines at idle. Now set the engine master mode back to norm. Go ahead and set flaps to 1 for takeoff. We're going to step upstairs again, disable the APU bleed, and turn off the APU. Taxi lights to on, and runway turnoff lights on. Or I should say nose wheel light to taxi is more accurate. Alright, and now we're just doing another quick flow, making sure we got everything. Okay, alright. Now the one thing I did forget to do, I don't normally do it, I'll be honest, bad habit, bad captain, whatever you want to call it, is as you start each engine, you should be enabling the chronometer. Once the first engine is at idle, you stop the chronometer, restart it, and flip on the other opposite engine and time their engine times. I don't worry about that because I don't have failures or anything like that turned on, so I do leave that off. However, I do use the chronometer for the flight time at the time that we actually roll for takeoff, which obviously I'll be demonstrating. Okay, but I think we have everything set. We have our transponder on and active. Engines are in the normal operation. Both engines are on and running. Spoilers are armed. Flaps are set for takeoff. The cabin door is locked. Predictive wind shear is turned on. TCAS is turned on. Let's see here. I think we've got everything ready to roll. Parking brakes are enabled. APU still shows available. That will go away as the APU shuts down. Heading for takeoff is set. Initial speed is set. Transition altitude is set for takeoff. And now we can see we're in the takeoff configuration. So we can go ahead and do takeoff configuration check. At this point, we would normally test the flight controls, which we can certainly do. So we can come here, go to flight controls, testing the rudders, ailerons, elevators. Okay, all controls showing free and clear. Let's go back to our doors page. All doors locked and secured. We are now ready for taxi. Alright, with taxi now ready to roll, let's go ahead and release those parking brakes. and add some power and get us rolling. So again, here to give you guys a visual here, we're going to be taxiing from Kilo up to November, from November over to Bravo, and we're taking the runway for active 26 left. Try to keep our taxi speed in between about 15 to 20 knots, never turning above 10 knots. So I'm going to start slowing us down a bit. The brakes are really touchy for me right now. I need to do some further configuration. Uh-oh. Okay. We got another airliner coming up here. Let's see here. This is November here. Yeah, see, the brakes are super sensitive for me. I need to work on those. This weekend I will be doing the complete removal of the simulator and reinstalling with the latest update. They reduced the base installation size to 80 gigs from 140 something, almost cut it in half, which is huge. Turn that one a little fast. Yeah, I really need to dive into these brakes. Sorry guys, that's why I'm letting it turn quickly, is because I know my brakes are ridiculous right now. I need to figure them out. I had everything set and dialed in so nice for so long. Alright, we're going to hold short here. And then with that last update, it just like blew out so much of my configuration. So we're going to set the nose wheel light to take off. We're going to turn on our landing lights and set the strobe light to auto or on. And now we will take the active runway. I could have sworn that I set that. Hang on a second, we need to fix that. Come on, come back to me. I must have missed that. I could have sworn I set that. So at the initial startup, when I first added the electrical power, I should have set this at the same time that I set my transponder. So we're going to take the runway here. Gosh, these brakes. Okay, so from here, we will now do a cabin check. Probably should have done this a little bit before taking the run, but that's alright. Okay. We're going to set our engines to about 50%, verify stabilization. They are stable. We're going to activate the chronometer. Throttles to full for toga takeoff. Slight pitch down on the nose until we pass through 80 knots. There's 80 knots. There's V1 coming up. And rotation. Pulling the nose up to about 15 degrees, climbing at approximately 3 degrees per second. Heading mode changed to the flight management computer, and autopilot 1 engaged. And the lever is coming back to the climb position. Once we approach the S here, we'll bring our flaps up. Okay, there we are. So flaps into the, oops, there we go. Retracted position. We can disarm the spoilers. Let's increase our altitude to 10,000 feet. Let's take a look at the outside for a minute. Whoa! Okay, the gear is still down. I'm not sure how that happened. Come on, baby. So, I think I'm having a problem with my Bravo throttle quadrant. This is the second time that's happened to me where, like, I'm sitting here looking at it, I flipped the gear up, and it did not come up. Now, I caught the gear lights here, which is why we switched to the outside for a second. But I'm not quite sure what's going on. Alright, we're at our transition altitude, so we're going to give this guy a tap. Oops, the other way. Go into standard pressure, which is 29902 for us in the US. I actually don't know what that is in hectopascals. Gosh, I didn't set it here either. Well, it's all the way back to 29902 anyway, but... Oh, you know what it is? I had to restart the first video. So on the first video, I did set the altimeters, and then I had to do it again because the sim crashed on me. I was using the Echo Golf Kilo Kilo, the Gatwick third-party scenery that's on FlightSim.2. Really amazing scenery. These guys have done so much fantastic work. Let's go ahead and increase our altitude up to about 15,000. They've done such amazing work with it, and then, you know, I was super excited. I had shown it off a long time ago in one of my videos. Got some traffic out there. Today, it keeps breaking. It kept crashing the sim. So it crashed once in the first video. It was actually on Pushback. As soon as I started the Pushback, bam, killed the simulator. And then I had tried it last night, and I didn't know, you know, hadn't determined what was at fault yet. But I tried it. God, look at how pretty that is. Ooh, shiny, right? Squirrel. But I had tried it again last night. Why are we getting a cabin pressure warning? Yeah, no, making sure everything's on. Landing elevation isn't much different. That's the first time I've ever gotten a cabin pressure warning in this aircraft. We're not in manual mode. Pressurization set. I didn't think we were climbing that fast. Climbing at 3,000 feet per minute. I don't feel like that's too fast. Interesting. Anyway. Let's go ahead and bring us up to our cruise altitude at this point. We're going to go to 30,000 feet today. Anyway, so that Gatwick scenery, it really sucks. I hope they fix it because it's amazing. It's a bit of an FPS killer, not going to lie. It absolutely pounds the FPS, and it's because there's so much detail both on the airport and it looks like the surrounding area. But highly recommend it still. Just keep an eye on it, and hopefully they'll fix it. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. Also, if anyone's interested in any of the mods that I use, I have a full spreadsheet list. Spreadsheet list on my Patreon site for Patreon subscribers, and that's all Patreon subscribers. So just thought I'd toss that out there. Up to you guys, obviously. I review so many mods and add-ons on this channel that, you know, I don't use them all. Obviously, I mean that's there's too many to even think about there. But all right, so basically, guys, we are pretty much set from here. We're just going to be climbing all the way up to our cruise altitude. Once we get to cruise altitude, you know, we can, or even now, as long as the weather's stable. Gosh, look at that. I'm taking a screenshot of that. Let me get my mouse out of the way. This is a simulator, guys. It's a simulator. It really is fantastic. Like, I can't... There are times I get super frustrated with Microsoft Flight Simulator, just like anybody else. And by the way, we're above 10,000 feet. I got to jabbering. You turn our landing lights off. Anytime above 10,000 feet, lights come off. But I get super frustrated with Microsoft Flight Simulator, but then you see some of the things that just astonish you. Like, what happens 10 years from now? I mean, think about the change from X-Plane to Microsoft Flight Simulator, graphically speaking. You know, don't get me wrong, Microsoft Flight Simulator has a long way to go before you could say it's better than X-Plane. You know, I mean, I guess that's a standard debate, right, is which one's better. And it really depends on, well, what's the question, right? Like my daughter asked me the other day, she goes, Dad, what's your favorite airplane in the world? And I was like, that's an incomplete question. You know, what era are we talking about? Are we talking about general aviation, commercial, military? And again, if we're talking military, what era are we referring to? World War II, modern day, Korea, Vietnam? You know, she sort of just looked at me like she wanted to slap me. But it's like, it's the same kind of principle here, you know. Well, which one's better, X-Plane 11 or P3D or Microsoft Flight Simulator? It depends what you're asking. Graphically speaking, Microsoft Flight Simulator destroys the other ones. And VFR Flight, Microsoft Flight Simulator destroys the other two, unless you are someone who has taken the time to do all the third-party maps and, you know, the import of satellite imagery and things like that. But even then, I don't think that you get all the 3D modeling that you get as far as the buildings and things. So, and you know, Microsoft Flight Simulator, even with the satellite imagery that we have, you know, I was talking to someone the other day in one of the comments, and we were talking about how things like radio towers and things like that and altitude towers are missing, right? They're not implemented yet. But overall, you can still very successfully, for the most part, fly VFR by looking out the window and looking for landmarks that you would see, for example, on Google Maps. You know, where unless you've done a ton of add-ons, you can't do that in X-Plane 11 P3D yet. You know, so it really depends on what the topic is. Flight models, sorry, Microsoft, no. P3D, X-Plane 11 especially beats just about everything in the flight model department. Their flight models are significantly better. The ground effects, everything from ground effect to turbulent effect, etc. You know, just overall wind position over the control surface of the aircraft. X-Plane 11 feels much more realistic, has a much more accurate simulation of what you would expect in the real aircraft. You know, it really, I mean, there's such a battle between the two. For me, Microsoft Flight Simulator absolutely wins it, and that's because I'm a graphics snob. I will absolutely say that, hands down. I am a snob when it comes to graphics. I think we can go ahead and let our passengers walk around. And you can turn their mobile devices on. You know, I mean, that's the nature of the two simulators and what we got coming. And Microsoft Flight Simulator is getting there, and the community, you know, whether it be Flybywire or, you know, some of the other third-party developers, or just, you know, average Joe making some new additions to the sim. You know, the community's, I don't want to say the community is doing all the work, not by any freaking means. So I got to be real careful how I say this. The community for Microsoft Flight Simulator, much like the community in X-Plane 11, are really what's making the sim. You know, the fly-by-wire that we're sitting in right now, the A320, being a perfect example. The comparison between the default and the fly-by-wire A320 is there is no comparison. There is no comparison. If the fly-by-wire A320, even the stable version. I always fly the development version, which means I take the risk of bugs and things like that. But I like having the new features. I stay away from the experimental version. The experimental version, as a content creator, a little too dangerous to be flirting with, and I've had it burn me a little too many times. And that's my own damn fault, right? I mean, when something says experimental and you try to do a content flight with it, well, you sort of got what you paid for on that one, or got what you asked for. With the fly-by-wire stable version being available now in the marketplace, if you are interested in flying the A320, if you are flying the A320 and not using the fly-by-wire mod, you are missing out on so much. And, you know, a lot of people get intimidated by the airliners. Well, there's just so much to do. Take it one step at a time, guys. You know, I really, you know, the guide that I advertised in the beginning, I really recommend it to people. I really took a lot of time and thought and a ton of community feedback in developing that guide to make it very staged, so you can progress with it as you move along. So really consider that, guys. But even if you don't pick up a guide or something like that, you know, all the tutorial videos out here, my videos, you know, plenty of other people's videos. Drya has a bunch of really good ones. Easy Pilot has a bunch of good ones. You know, so I mean, make sure that you guys check those out and get into them, because they are a lot of fun to fly. This is probably the most boring part right here, is when you get up to cruise or close to it. You know, once you're waiting there, then yeah, at this point it becomes a drag. You know, because literally all you can do is sit and wait. I think for me, the startup is my favorite. Startup and configuration is just fun. I love flipping all the switches and tapping everything into the MCDU. You know, it's just a blast. And then following right behind that is definitely descent and approach. And I would say the approach more than the descent. The descent is fun if you try to do it on your own. And what I mean by that is not having something tell you when to descend. You know, sort of thinking about your altitude, thinking about your speed, thinking about your descent rate. You know, how far away do I need to be, and then seeing if you get it right. Because if you don't get it right, then you get to do you know, spin it, as I call it. You get to do a circle until you get down to the altitude you're supposed to be at, which has happened to me on more occasions than I'd like to admit. But you know, I love learning like that. You know, trial and error, I think, is the best way to learn. And in a simulation, you know, obviously we have that advantage. In real world, trial and error, probably not the best way to learn. That's how you get people killed, or burn a lot of fuel and you know, lose your job. But with as often as I can, you know, that's why I always try to leave my mistakes in my videos. You know, as I want people to be able to see that portion of the video. I want people to see the mistakes. I want people to see the, you know, that, you know, and some people rip into me about it. You know, I've had some comments come across my channels. Oh my gosh, you're an idiot. You have no business doing this. You know, you shouldn't be doing tutorials if you're going to be showing mistakes, blah, blah. It's like, well, you know what? And I don't care. People are free to say whatever the hell they want. I really don't care. If it really pisses me off, I'll just remove the comment. You know, it doesn't bother me. But we learn so much from our mistakes, you know, and I've had plenty of people comment and even say the same thing, that they're glad that I leave my mistakes in. I'm no pro. I'm no real world pilot. Certainly not a commercial pilot of an Airbus, you know, but I've done what I can to, you know, hopefully stem the learning curve for those who are like me and aviation enthusiasts to the max, you know, and want to learn as much as they can. And you know, like I said, the nice thing about simulation is you can make those mistakes and learn from them, and so why not show them off? Hey, if you do something stupid like I just did, here's what's going to happen, and here's how you correct it, you know? So anyway, that's just me. Well, a little jabber on. I don't jabber very much anymore during the cruises anymore, but apparently I was lonely and felt like talking to you guys today. So we are up at our cruise altitude, so at this point we're going to be sitting tight for quite a while. We had a 350 nautical mile flight. We still got quite a ways to go. We can see the distance meter set here at 360. Here's 320, so we're looking at 160, not 360. I can pop this up. Well, here, let's just zoom in. You can see we're looking at about 250 nautical miles away at 30,000 feet. We're probably going to start our top of descent at about 90 miles away. That way we can intercept the star appropriately. But we'll take a look at all those charts at about 120 miles. I will get back with you guys and we'll take another peek at next steps. All right, so I will see you guys in just a bit. Real quick, guys, as I was preparing for my descent, I noticed something that was right in front of my face earlier, and I wanted to catch it. I've never seen this before. Honestly, it's the first time I've ever seen it combined. I was telling you guys that there was no rival star. It's right here. Apple and rival 1 Golf. I've never seen that before. I've never seen it combined, so all I did was read the first word, so that's my fault. Lesson learned there. So again, as we just got done talking about making mistakes, for those of you who listened to my ramble on the last segment, don't do that. Make sure that you guys read everything to its completion. So anyway, we do have the star. This is what I'll be using for my approach. Here's our rival waypoint. This will be the fix joining onto the star. Actually, that doesn't make sense. Let me check this. So I got our arrows coming down. No, Glasgow, I'm right. So we need to be by rival. It's only 16.1 nautical miles. So yeah, we're going to be down low at that point. 330. Let's see what we got here. Here we go. Rival to Niska and Aslib. Oh, here we go. At flight level 260. So this will be my first target is Aslib. We'll make sure that we are down 4,000 feet. So what we'll probably do is simply at rival start our descent down to flight level 260. Okay, and then continue our descent from there. And for those of you who don't know real quick how to read these, whenever you see these blue lines here, okay, you got a blue line below and a blue line on top. If you have your flight level 260, and let's say that this bottom blue line here was not there. So all we see is Aslib, blue line, flight level 260. This bottom blue line is not there. That means that we need to be at or below flight level 260. If we don't see this blue line and only see this one, it means we need to be above flight level 260. What we're seeing here is, as we have a line above and below, is that we must be at flight level 260 when reading these charts. You cannot be above it, you cannot be below it. Okay, and then we'll see here, by VAPI, we need to be slowed down to 250 knots, so we'll be paying attention to that. And then here at Atlantic at 230 knots. So, anyway, we'll go ahead and see what that looks like here in just a bit. But figured I'd share that with you guys. Make sure you read the whole thing, because that was right in front of my face and I missed it. Alright, guys. Alright, guys, so we're getting close here. Just after Niska, we're going to probably start looking into our descent. We need to be at 26,000 feet by Aslib here. So you can see here there's roughly 20 miles between the two. So right about, I don't know, 10 to 15 miles in is when we will, well actually we'll look at our distance here. Our distance to Aslib, when that reaches about 15 miles, we'll start our descent down to 26,000 feet. Alright, so we're getting close here. And you can see here on Navigraph charts, we're starting to track down in onto the star. So hopefully everything lines up here, and we're just going to follow everything right down to what we got. So from after this fix here, ODG, we will be going down to, let's see you say that word better. Anyway, we'll be going down to flight level 70, so going down to 7,000 feet Atlantic, and then starting onto the approach. So let's just see where we're at here. Got a couple more minutes here, so I'll kick back with you guys as we get ready for the descent, because really at this point I'm still just watching. Actually, that is exactly what we can do. It's time to enter in our destination data. Normally I do that right after I start the descent, but we can do it now. It's already up on the screen and ready, so let's do it. So we're going to go to the performance page. Let's clear that alert out, and we're going to go to the next phase, and we're going to find the destination. So first thing that we're going to do is swing on over here and take a look at our destination, QNH 1022. Let's come on back. Oops. 1022. Drop that in. Now let's go over and check out our temps. Temp is 15. Oh, wrong one. 17. So we're going to go to 17 degrees Celsius there. Check out our winds. Wind is 220 at 10 knots. So 220/10 knots. Transition altitude, we're looking at 6,000 feet, assuming that I have it correct. We are going to be using a full landing configuration, and now let's take a look at our minimums. How we can do that is we'll go to the approach page, find our ILS 23. And here we go. Decision height of 50 feet. Wow, that's low. So touchdown elevation. Let's take a look at that. Let's see if we have that here. Should be here. So all of these are decision height of 200 feet for a Cat 1, which is what we're going to be doing today. So we'll be setting in 200 feet, and then I'm just curious if I can find our touchdown zone elevation. Airport elevation is 26 feet. Up, transition altitude 6,000. Woot! Got it. Nailed it. Final approach course 229 degrees. Got our ILS localizer, the glide slope. Huh. I don't see a touchdown zone elevation, and I feel like I should. Runway 21 ILS glide slope, ground speed 2500. Da 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 da. Decision height, cat height. Huh. I don't see it. Unless it's just, well, that's runway 21 feet. That might be it right there. That would make sense. 26 feet at airport elevation, 21 feet for the runway touchdown. Okay, fine. I can live with that. Let's go back to our star so I can track that. Alright, anyway. So let's set the 200 feet. Actually, we'll set that to the radar altitude. Oops, sorry. Not gonna let me. Let's see if it'll swap. I think it just swaps. There we go. Perfect. Oh, we're getting bouncy. Someone's getting crazy. Alright, so we're about 27 nautical miles from Aslib. So we'll just be holding tight here until we get to about 15. And then we'll descend on down to 26,000 feet. Let's get our seatbelt signs turned back on. Let people know to sit down because we're getting ready to come down. Chime the cabin. I think other than that, we're still set and looking good. Yep, so at this point, we're just going to keep watching our clock here. Got about 7 miles to go. And we'll start our descent down into Glasgow. Really excited to see this. Like I said, this is a airport scenery that I purchased from the sim market, and I've never seen it before. This will be my first view of it. So hopefully everything works out nicely and it looks good. You got to remember 1022 for altimeter pressure as we come out of the standard, but we got a ways before we have to worry about that. It's going to be weird. I'm going to have to remind myself not to do it 18,000 feet. Alright, so we're at 16 there. I think that's safe enough. Let's go ahead and get us down to 26,000. Go into a managed descent. Aircraft's now slowing down. And here comes the descent. And if you're ever given the command to descend via the star, this is what they're referring to, is these steps here. So first we'll come down to 26,000, and then we'll come down to 20,000 as we're approaching Otaji. And you can see that there as well. And this little guy right here, this little tail, should be letting us know at which point we should be reaching our desired altitude. Looks like it's a little off, but that's okay. As long as we're there by Aslib, I don't care. So I'll see you guys as we start to approach the VAPI waypoint here, as we start getting into the speed restrictions. We'll take a look at that now. That doesn't look right. So they've got us at flight level 20,000 feet here, and then, well, actually that's the next one. Never mind, it's almost 40 miles distance. I was going to say, how are we supposed to get to 7,000 feet? I was sitting here looking between these two. Because this one here has us at 20,000 feet, but flight level Otaji says the same thing. So there's no way I can go from 20,000 feet to 7,000 feet in you know, 10 miles. So after O to G, we will be descending all the way down to 7,000, because otherwise that ain't happening. There's just no way. But we hit our target here at ASLib. We got to 26,000 feet right as we're approaching it. So that's good stuff. And so from here, we'll continue our descent down to 20,000. Again, returning to a managed mode. The speed restriction should be honored as we reach that. So, all right, guys. So I'll see you guys in just a few minutes here. All right, so we are approaching our next fix here, and we can see that again. We should be reaching our altitude right about the time we reach the waypoint. Start reducing our distances here. Now, because of the speed restriction, I'm not going to let the computer manage it. We're just going to force it. So we're going to go into a managed mode. Anytime you reduce the speed, the aircraft's going to level out a bit until it can slow down. So we're going to slow us down to 250 knots. Just get a bit ahead of the game. Whoa, that was weird. What was that about? That was interesting. Once it reaches the target speed, the aircraft will continue to descend as you have requested previously. Which we have reached. And from here, we are going to now set our altitude all the way down to 7,000 feet. Put it back into a managed descent. Now, to help her slow down a bit, we're going to, or to maintain that speed, we're going to pull some speed brakes out so that we can increase our descent rate. Otherwise, I'm worried about us reaching our altitude on time. We have to stay below 250 knots by this location, but we also still have to make sure to get the aircraft down in time to reach 7,000 feet by Atlantic. Otherwise, we're going to have to come around again. I really don't want to do that. Looking for a one-stop shop approach here. I will show you, we show an altitude restriction here of flight level 200, but I don't show it here on the chart. And I mean, it's not possible. There's no way. That's got to be something weird with the database that we have right now for Microsoft Flight Simulator, because I mean, that's less than 10 miles, or maybe a little bit over 10 miles, but there's no way that you're going to drop that kind of altitude. Matter of fact, we are still descending a little on the slow side. Honestly, it's got me a bit worried. I'm not sure. Pull those to full aft. I'm going to slow us down to 230 knots for our next fix. Actually, I'm going to go 220. Well, let's go 230. And I am leaving those spoilers deployed for right now. We have 20 miles to drop 7,000 feet. I'm hoping that's enough and maintain our airspeed restriction. Worst case scenario, we can go to flaps 1 at this speed, but I'm trying to avoid that. And again, this is how I learn. That may or not be the right course of action. But these are the things that I try and how I learn it. So just not descending fast enough. So I'm going to go ahead and do flaps 1. We're right at the limit there, so let's slow us down a bit. Let's go down 210 knots. There she goes. So we were right at the limit there for overspeeding the flaps. We still have 7,000 feet to go in order to hit our target. Let's bring up the approach page. About 30 miles out, I'm going to go ahead and start prepping for the approach. Alright, so for the approach, we're going to turn on our LS mode. This will start tracking the localizer. Now we're still about 30 miles out, so it's not tracking it yet. Plus we're still up at 12,000 feet. Looks like we are going to hit our altitude target, which is good. I was a little worried about that. Actually, I don't think we are. It'll be close. We'll see. We'll see. I think it's going to be close. We're going to be close enough, I think. And so from here, I'm going to go ahead and set it down to 3,000. Stay ahead of everything. But I think we'll reach our 7,000 mark in the next 10 miles. It'll be close, but I think close enough to manage it. So LS system's on. Once it acquires, we'll see the ILS frequency appear down here. But again, we're still a ways out. About 30 miles out, give or take. Coming up on 10,000 feet, I'm going to get some lights turned on. Nose wheel light to taxi for landing. Landing lights on, and runway turn-off lights on as well. Seatbelt signs are already set. No portable devices are already set. People know sit down, get ready for landing. Auto brakes we're going to be using. Let's see here. What do we got? Distance of runway today. We are landing on... Bring this over here so you guys can see. I'm trying to see what our distance, how much runway we actually have here to land on without going to the taxi chart. I might have to though. It's for the missed approach instructions. Huh. I'm actually not seeing my runway link, so let's go over here to the airport information. So we can come over here to that one. All right, what do we got? 8,700 feet of runway. So let's do auto brake set to medium for landing. It's probably still way more than we need, but all right. So we have now acquired the ILS frequency. We're not going to activate the localizer yet. We are hitting our altitude on time, so we got that squared away. I'm going to go ahead and bring the spoilers up. We're going to maintain flaps 1. I'm going back to the approach page, or star, excuse me. And we are coming off the star. We are set only as a max of 230 knots, so we're good there. So it looks like speed is our discretion from here on moving in. So it says back to the ILS for runway 23. Approaching 6,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and switch us back here. We're going to do 1022. Let's confirm that's still correct. Yep, 1022 on the QNH. Now, I don't know how to do the conversion here, so I'm going to switch this for a second. 3019. And we can leave that as is. Up to you. Leave one on one on the other. Ooh, mercy. Getting bumpy, lads. 6,000 feet. Alright, so we actually need to sit here for a minute, so we're going to hold steady. Because we're supposed to be above 7,100. But I'm not going to try to make that descent that fast. That's a little crazy for me. Go ahead and go flaps up. Alright, so I'll see you guys in a minute as we get up to the approach. Why are we in a descent? There. That was weird. Alright, so it's going to get us back up to 6,000 feet and then we should level out. We are not leveling out. What are you doing, girl? Why do we keep doing this? It keeps going into vertical speed mode. That is so weird. Just sit tight. That's all I want you to do. Sit tight. You gonna sit still this time? Because I didn't tell you to climb in vertical speed mode. Look at that. Negative. Nope. Switches back over. Dude. Alright, well, we'll just set you to 0. Weird. Anyway, alright, so I'll see you guys as we start coming around the corner here. I figured we had a minute, so I'd talk with you guys a little bit. Check out Glasgow. This is a really gorgeous area. Very cool. You know, I always talk about Tucson in a way that, you know, I always mention we don't have tornadoes, we don't have hurricanes or earthquakes or tsunamis or blizzards or... But man, sometimes I think about it would be worth it to live in scenery like this, you know, to have green and water and green and water and maybe some more green and water, you know. Anyway, so I figured I'd just share that with you guys. Oh, here's our turn. Everything's looking good here. Alright, we're just going to keep holding the altitude for the moment until we come back around for the final approach. We are now beginning our final descent. We're just outside 10 miles, so we are going to go ahead and go flaps 1 again. Slowing the aircraft down to about 180 knots. We're pretty high for where we want to be. I got a little too busy sightseeing. That's alright, we'll capture it still. We got 2,900 feet here and 2,900 feet here, so that is a mistake. Don't get involved in looking out the window. Pay attention to your altitudes. But, oh well. You can see we're approaching the glide slope, so all should be well. Let's go ahead and lock up the localizer. And we'll just go ahead and put her into approach mode. Now lock her in at 2,000 feet. Got a little bit below the glide slope now. And this is why I should not be this low. It's because of this. But we actually are at our required altitude now, which is good. So actually, I guess we didn't do anything wrong. Come to think of it, we fixed a mistake. Interesting. The localizer has been locked. There's our runway right out ahead of us. That was pretty dramatic, but that's all right. I don't know why the descent is continuing. Let's
2,500.
Seriously, that's driving me nuts. And now it's climbing in. No, I don't want you climbing. Knock it off. I don't know if they've reworked some of the autopilot things or what, but some of this is annoying. Alright, there. Now we've got you locked in. Mercy. That was special. Alright, so we are at 7 miles. So now we should be moving down to flaps 2, gear down. I think they made some changes to the autopilot that I now have to start practicing more with. Glide slope is acquired. Alright, and we're almost ready for flaps full, but give the cabin a chime. Moving into managed airspeed mode. Which will now be referencing our target airspeed of 133 knots. Below 180 knots, we'll move to flaps 3. Spoilers are armed. Wind shear, landing lights. Everything is checked. We are ready to go. And we are now at our flaps full reference. So, one more tap on the flap handle. You can see the flaps have extended to full. Alright, so we are fully configured. We're 1,000 feet away. Gears down, lights are set, flaps are set, spoilers are armed, auto brake is set. 500 feet. I'm going to take the aircraft back. The noise you're hearing with the throttles is because of the detents I have set. I need to adjust them again.
100 above.
Continuing.
Minimum. $100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
Reversers engaged. They were supposed to be engaged. Apparently that got changed too. What happened to all of my controls? Alright, we're going to get hot brakes for a second. Oof. Okay, so kind of curious what happened there. I had my thrust reversers should have been deployed when I landed. Let's clear the runway. We'll cross over the taxi line. And hold her still here. So a couple things went scary and south right there. Let's set the parking brake for a second. We'll talk while I'm cleaning things up. Flaps up, spoilers disarmed. Auto brakes are clear. And nose wheel lights set to taxi, landing lights turned off. Runway turn off lights no longer needed, and strobe light disabled as well. So, for whatever reason, Alright guys, so unfortunately shortly after landing the recording stopped, so at least it stopped there and not somewhere else. And Video Shadowplay has really been giving me a run for my money, and then you have OBS, which I have a terrible time recording in 4K with Microsoft Flight Simulator, so I just got to figure out the lesser of the two evils. There is a driver update for NVIDIA, so hopefully that'll fix the shadow play issues today. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, as always, guys, I leave the good and the bad in the videos for a reason. I hope you guys enjoyed everything there. As far as the chaos there when we landed, for whatever reason, the simulator did not pick up the key command to engage the thrust reversers. I did check the controls and they were actually set. It just, for whatever reason, the sim didn't recognize them. I had the same problem with the landing gear when we went for takeoff. So I'm gonna have to dive into it. And it's really weird because I can go into the controls menu. You know, if we just go to, what is it, options and controls, I can go here and flip the switches all day long and they work. Like it registers that, yeah, I'm seeing it, but when I go into the aircraft, I keep having weird behaviors like this. This is the second time it's happened with the landing gear. I just caught it sooner. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a lot. At the very least, I hope it was entertaining. Thank you guys all of you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.